Okay, guys, welcome to the Thursday Q&A session of the Amazing Showdown. Today we have another great demo. We're going to talk about back-end search terms, and we have a really great step-by-step guide for this that we'll have finished by the end of business today, maybe tomorrow afternoon at the latest, but it's really good. It goes through all these same steps, but of course we continued to use Levi's as our example in the documentation, but in this one I'm going to use the epoxy that we covered on Tuesday's class to walk you guys through the steps in the backend search term optimization process. I'll go ahead and move this so it's a little bit bigger so you guys can read everything. And let's go ahead and kind of start going through this. So the very first thing that we're going to do, again, we're going to be working on this epoxy that we were working on Tuesday, right? So Tuesday we did the search term optimization for this product. We did the campaign restructuring. It was a really good example. We did some bid optimization. We did a lot of different things. Did a little new keyword research. This was a great product. It's really scaling nicely with the ad strategy. We were able to look at those numbers over here in our lifetime. We can go back to all campaigns, but as we can see, this product is doing really nicely. We started with 16,000 in spend. We've done 70,000 in sales, 24% average A cost. So campaigns were launched during the course. It looks really good. We're kind of on track to really scale this out. So the next thing we're going to do after we get the search terms mined is we're going to do the back-end search terms, because the back-end search terms need to be congruent with your advertising strategy, because it's all about sales history. And the thing about the back-end search terms is when it's very similar to advertising, where when the searcher, when the shopper comes and types in a specific search query in the Amazon search bar, what the algorithm is going to go ahead and match that directly to the words in the back end. And it's going to first look in your title, then it's going to look in your bullets, and then it's going to look at the back end. So it's really nice to take the keywords. Sorry, guys, the second week I've been hoarse. It's really nice to take the keywords that have been really producing sales and proven to put sales history in place for you and put those in the back end. And the best way to do that is to actually mine those keywords from your search term report. And then the key to making the back end really effective is to be sure, I'm going to go ahead and shrink these down now that I made it bigger, is to be sure that you're paying attention to the things we talked about in class 1, which is you got to pay attention to the frequency, and you pay attention to definitely the sequence. One of the most important overlooked factors on optimizing any kind of back end or SEO is paying close attention to the sequence of the words and how the words are sequenced. I'm going to show you a lot of those tricks here today. So this is the finished sheet. These are going to be the back end search terms, but let me kind of show you the steps that I took to put that together. So the first thing you do is you have a back-end search term sheet, and you're going to go ahead and import your most recent STR, right? So this is going to be the search term report that we reviewed on Tuesday. I've gone ahead and imported the single manual campaigns only. It's a keyword strategy, obviously, so I don't need auto. So I pulled in my manual keywords that I've been targeting, and I brought them in to into this workbook. Now, the thing you're going to do next is you're going to go into Helium 10, and you're going to go ahead and open up the Frankenstein tool, right? I did a little bit of this for Levi's this morning. Let me go ahead and clean this up though. So now this is the Frankenstein tool. It's the fifth tool right here on the sidebar. You're going to open up the Frankenstein tool, and you're going to go ahead, and you don't need any of these other sheets open. I'll close them out for you guys because you only need the search term workbook. So then from here, you're going to go ahead and take your search terms, 3+ orders. I'm going to take all the keywords. I'm going to drop those because as we saw from Tuesday's class, when you take these keywords, data, we'll sort this range by keyword, column C, A to Z. As we can see, these single keywords are driving some enormous orders. You may think epoxy resin is just epoxy resin, but when you take it across all the sales units that it's mined, it's done the majority of orders, right? It's done 42, 39, 22, 18, 18, and 12, even though it's on unique search terms some of the time. You can really see that epoxy resin, as you go down the row, is a really key, crucial word in terms of what drives sales velocity for this product. And again, the back end, you want optimized for sales velocity, just like you want your ad campaigns optimized for sales velocity, because the goal of Amazon advertising is to make it congruent with your SEO strategy, congruent with your organic growth strategy, and use it as a tool to drive total sales, not just advertising sales. Always, always, always. So let me go ahead and resort that by orders. Okay, so that is going to be, let me get it, ZA. Okay, that's going to be why we take these keywords, right? Even if these are the seed keywords, I'm going to list them first in my Frankenstein tool. I'm going to copy that list in, right? But then the real gold, of course, is going to be to come in here and get the second batch of keywords, my actual unique search terms, right? That's where the real gold is. And I'm going to put those in, right? And that's why you're going to update these regular, because you always have a new list of backend search terms, and you could find new search terms that aren't currently listed. And this is a much easier, there's no, it's a very simple thing to process, because there's not a lot of words involved. So you can easily update this very regular and do it very strategically. So you copy your search terms, 3+ orders, right? This whole list back over here into the Frankenstein tool below all your unique terms. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to say, you want 1 word phrase per line. You want to remove duplicates. You want to convert to lowercase. You want to include your word frequency count. You don't have to at this point remove special characters. You're gonna go ahead and process that. And so then you're going to go ahead and you're going to sort by frequency, because that's always useful. And you could also look at it as is. Either way it's not going to matter which way you do it. I normally, because I'm going to do it manually to get this done correctly. So I'm normally going to sort by frequency, like how frequently do these words show up in the list, because that gives me an indication of which of these seed keywords I need in my back end. So I copy this final list over here to my sheet under search terms, right? And it's just sorted here by frequency, all the different words that came out of my search term uniques, right? So then the next thing I do, and this may be something that you don't have, I'm going to assume this is your first time doing the back-end search terms. This is something you don't have to do your title or category steps. I want to clarify a few different details here. First and foremost, if you don't have a search term report and you're doing the back-end search terms, you're going to have to use a normal keyword research report, but you're going to need to be sure it's already cleaned up and you've removed anything that's not relevant, and you're focused just on those really good browse and shop keywords, right? With the right key modifiers that are going to actually match up for traffic. So you really want to be sure that when you're doing that if you are going to use your keyword list, that they're very well cleaned. You definitely don't want to just go ahead and put like a random keyword list up, pull it into uniques through the Frankenstein tool, and list that as your keywords, right? So it's really important on the back end that there's a lot of relevancy, and it's going to build sales history. So if you don't have search terms, you do want to just put keywords in your search term column. That'll be the only difference. And if it's, like I said, I'm going to treat this as your first time doing this. So the next thing that we're going to do is, sorry guys, my cat, she's never done this. She's super intrigued by the microphone. Go. Okay, well, that'll never happen again. Lesson. Anyway, so the search terms are here. And that came out of the list. It's sorted. And the next thing we do is we go and we get our titles, right? That's going to be the next thing that we do. And the way we get our titles is we go ahead back to our top 10 competitors, classic, old school, competitive analysis sheet, competitive analysis strategy. You guys all have that down. I've seen your examples. You go ahead and you're going to grab the titles from your top 10 competitors. Again, we know these competitors are hyper relevant. We know that these are the top ranked competitors. They're the top best-selling competitors. We know these are the competitors that the algorithm currently favors, right? We know these are the winners. Take these titles. We're going to do the exact same process. We're going to drop them in to our Frankenstein tool, put them over here. We're going to go ahead, same settings, and we're going to go ahead and process. And that's going to give us a really, of course, you're going to clean this stuff and remove stuff that, characters, or not just characters, but numbers, things that don't really make sense. But then you're going to move that in to your second column, which is titles, right? So that's going to go into your titles. And after it's all cleaned up, you get everything you have here. And that's going to be your title section, right? And some of these you can clear you can clean them even further, but you don't really have to, because you're just going to be pulling the good stuff out when I show you how to do it. Okay. The third step that you take is categories. And I think this is the most overlooked step that people take in their backend search term optimization. I rarely see anyone pay attention to this. And I know that anybody who's paid any attention to like the Mavericks and the Amazon PPC and SEO space, I know that I do because they're all my peers. We all know that categories is the game on Amazon. For me, it's winning categories. I'm all about taking the bestseller badge, as you guys know that have seen my train robber presentation. I love to take the bestseller badge in a category. I do it for all my products whenever I can. So I believe that the key to winning on Amazon is categories, right? I mean, of course, we see it across the product pages within the category. We see how tightly and densely everything is kind of siloed into categories in the Amazon ecosystem. So categories really is the name of the game. From an SEO standpoint and a back-end search term standpoint, you want to pay close attention to categories, right? Making sure your product's in the right category. I found something new about this one. It should be probably changed if it's not too well ranked, which it is. But you really want to be using your category keywords to do more with your back-end search terms. There's a whole lot of optimization that you can do with category keywords. So the main thing you want to do is you go ahead over to your competitors' product pages, right? So I'm going to pull up like any one of these, like the East Coast resin product. I'm going to search for it by ASIN, the Total Boat by ASIN. I mean, you'll have links in your competitor sheets probably, but you're going to go to each of these product pages, and then you're going to go ahead and you're going to scroll down on the competitor's product page until you get to this section right here, right? Where you get their kind of category breakdown. And then in your back-end search term sheet, create a little sheet called categories, and then you'll just go ahead and pop these in. All right. So what this says, this allows me to kind of see, okay, how does this category drill down work, right? And then of course, I'm going to take these categories. This is my category. And personally, I wouldn't list this in tile epoxy adhesives. I'd be listing it in regular adhesive sealants epoxies. So I think this is the ideal category. If you guys wanted to know where I would list this product from a category standpoint, I would not have it listed here. It's not the end of the world, but it's really not a tile adhesive. It's definitely used as a tabletop finishing surface. So I would even be more likely to think it's relevant in varnish, but I would stay in epoxies because that's my main seed keyword. It's driving all my sales. So if I had to choose on this one, I would definitely be choosing to put it here. But here's where I'm at right now. So I take my top 10 competitors, and on these, there were a lot of duplications. These competitors have a lot of different sizing. So one's 2 gallons, one's 32 ounces, one's 16 ounces, but they were a lot of the same titles. So in this one, there was only a few categories. But I went ahead and compiled out of the top 10 all of the categories from their product page. And now I end up with this nice little kind of drill down. Now from here, I'm going to take all that data. I'm going to do the same little thing, including my own data. But for this one, it's right there because I just copied it. I'm going to take it over into my Frankenstein tool, paste it in there. I'm going to go ahead and process it. And that's going to give me my categories, right? And of course, I'll clean this up. The and, the signs, the ends. It'll start with industrial scientific. I move it over here to my categories section in my backend search term sheet. So this is the first thing that you want to do. Now, once you have this done, of course, over here, you're going to start to kind of break things down. And this is where it's really important, like anything else. Strategically, you don't want to just throw a bunch of keywords in, right? That's not our goal. And let me go ahead and format this text wrapping to wrap so you guys can see them all. Because another thing that's really important, you can also, the Frankenstein tool will give you your character counts. So you can actually come in here, and when you put something in, it shows you total characters here. It'll show you total characters on the final list here. So as I'm doing my list, I also put the total characters from the tool next to each section so I don't exceed that 250. And I'm telling you, most people are freaked out about that limited character usage, but there's no limitation because we already know that this is all of the keywords that convert for us, every single one of them, right, to 3+ orders. And we know that this is everything in the titles, right? And it's all super effective. So with that in mind, we know we're not missing anything, and we're still only, with everything included, we're still only at, like 180 something characters. So when we come back over here, so we have our search terms in one column, and we have our titles in another column, all the main seeds pulled out of Frankenstein, and we have our categories in another. So then when you go to the back end, and I'm not going to dive into Daryl's inventory section, but when you get into the back end, you have a few sections, right? And they're right down here. So I put this exactly as it reads for you guys. So you can see that. So it's going to look like this, right? That's what you're looking at in the back end. And let's wrap this one too, since I have to put it tighter so you guys can see the whole screen. There we go. Okay, so this is going to be what your back end looks like, right? And you have this other attributes section. So we're going to go kind of place by place and pull this apart. And I got to make sure I have enough room here though, so you guys can see everything. So I'm going to move this guy down because it starts to get built out as I do it. Okay, so you end up with this kind of rough, like this little list over here, right? But here's where I'm talking about how important sequence is. So I could easily like just type these up, right? I could just be like, it's, epoxy resin. I'm going to go in order, right? Clear. I'm going on line 4, line 5, crystal. I'm in that first column, just typing up the words as they show up. Tabletop, and then 2-part, and then bar, and then kit. Okay, that's an okay way to do it, but it's not the best way to do it, right? You could type it all in there and you get a list. Like we have like the order is right here. The search terms, so when I just type them up in the order of the word frequency, they just show up like this. But the best way to do this is to go back to your search terms and really look at those main keywords that drove the most sales, right? Like looking through here and going ahead and copying those keywords over to your backend search terms and paying close attention to the word sequence. Because when Amazon goes to match what the shopper has typed in, they're going to look for a perfect match. Remember, you're dealing with a computerized system. It's very structured. The algorithm is as structured as it's ever going to get. It's absolute genius. So you don't want messy anything. The easier you can make it for the algorithm to figure out what you're saying through clean structure and clear communication, the better results you're going to get, right? It's definitely like simplicity is key, efficiency is key, really focusing in on okay, so the algorithm is going to see, you already know that your number one converter is epoxy resin crystal clear, right? And if you were to go with this sequence here, it would be epoxy resin clear crystal. You don't want to do that. Instead, you want to go back up to it and you want to say, okay, my first most important keyword is epoxy resin. We already know that from our actual keywords that drove the sales. Now I have epoxy resin crystal clear. So by looking at my word sequence, I'm going to say epoxy resin is first, epoxy resin, crystal clear would be next, right? To keep my sequence in the same order, right? And then from there, I would kind of go through and you can see by keeping these keywords in this sequence, I would catch the first, 80% of my sales are coming from these keywords and 80% are covered here in like the first 4 words. That's how potent it is. Amazon is such a kind of like a short tail kind of engine. So here we have all that. So then the next thing that we do is we start to put things together is we even work from our titles in the same way. So if you're putting together your keywords, you want to keep your sequence right because this is how people search for it. It's how it matches in the algorithm. So you want to pay attention. It would be 2-part is fine. You have tabletop is fine. But then you have it here as a 1-gallon kit, right? So if you were putting kit in and you have the word gallon, you have the word 1, it showed up in your search terms over here, right? So instead of using gallon randomly or, any of these things, like here we go, top table. We know it's not top table, it's table top, right? We know if someone searches for this, it's going to be tabletop, not top table. It's going to be epoxy resin crystal clear, or they're going to go epoxy resin tabletop, and it's going to be in the same sequence. 2-part, definitely you have to keep those in order. 2-part, and then you have this 1-gallon kit. So here you go. All 3 of those are keywords. But instead of putting them just randomly, you're going to put them as they would be searched for so that when someone goes ahead and types in 1-gallon kit, it's not like, the algorithm's trying to see if you have all those words in your back end. Instead, you're going to have the exact matching phrase. So you continue to go through that and you're going to see that countertops, course, is here. It's going to be in your singles over here. You move it over there. And so you kind of continue to build your list. Like you could take just the singles out of here, but it's super important that you take all these singles and include them. Don't get me wrong. Of course, they're up here, right? I've got all my search terms, all my titles, but then you want to pull the actual data in side by side and start to reorganize the words so that the right words are priority, My main sales driving keywords are right here. Tabletop, right here. Two-part, right here. Bar, right here. Bar top, right here. Countertop, right? So all your main sales driving keywords from the STR go up in the front. You front load those. Everything from the titles of your top competitors and, of course, your own title goes after that. You don't have to worry about your title as much because, as you know, they already look at the title and bullets. But if you're trying to put this as its own unique piece where Amazon can match your back-end search terms to what the shopper queried, you want to make sure you include everything, and you want to include them in frequency and sequence, right? So the frequency of how much they drive sales and the sequence of how the words are actually found and searched for. So that's going to be the main thing you could drive there. So I get my titles here. I organize my titles, not mine, but my competitors, into a place where I can like look at all of the different ways that things are framed. For example, professional is a big keyword, and grade. Okay, but it's professional grade. We know if someone searched for that, they would go in that sequence. There was a gloss coating was another sequence. It was important. The 1 gallon kit was another sequence. So after I make sure all my search terms are in there, then I start to add in the others from the titles from, that I know are super relevant. And then I go to my category and I look at the same kind of thing. I say, okay, which of these keywords is super relevant to what I do, but categorically is kind of consistently across the whole thing, right? And with that one, I'm able to find that it's industrial, it's an adhesive, it's a sealant, it's a varnish, right? So I can then include those words in the back end as well. And I would probably even be a little less likely to include adhesive in there just because I think it may be slightly misleading, but it's not terribly misleading, and it is a category keyword and it needs to stay there for something else though. So then from there, we get our final back end list. We kind of merge together. And on this point, you can also, sorry, I deleted that. And you can also decide at this point if you want to include your brand. I do. Again, some people feel like they don't have to do any duplication, but when you start to get a lot of brand searches, I definitely include my brand within the main keywords, depending on where it's at in my search term reports. So if I were to pull this STR and Versacoat was constantly, like some of my brands are, constantly showing up as one of the top keyword drivers, yeah, it needs to be in the back end, in my opinion. But I mean, again, some people keep their title completely unique from their back end search terms. With 184 characters, I personally am not. But then you have your back end, you have all these in sequence, you've got the highest frequency, you've got them out of all the main places. Now, the thing I think most people overlook from here is doing this other attributes section. Let's move it back up now that we have the back end final. The other attributes is so key because what you do, the way I do other attributes is I look at the category listing, right? So from here, I'll just copy all this in over to my back end search terms. And I'm going to see here, okay, so it's saying it's intended use. It's super clear that Amazon thinks its intended use is for tools and home improvement. That's a really good one, right? Tools and home improvement. And if you want to put in here, you could also say industrial, right? If you wanted to add another keyword from your intended use, industrial, tools, and home improvement, right? Now, the other thing is the target, men, women, and then professionals. That showed up quite a bit, right? And then my other attributes, though, I come over here into kind of like the longer tail here, and I say, okay, so Amazon keeps categorizing this as an adhesive, right? It puts it as an adhesive and a sealant and a varnish, right? So then I go ahead and other attributes and I list it as an adhesive, a sealant, and a varnish. And then in the subject matter, rather than just using epoxy or epoxy resin, which I normally would do if I was just being keyword dense, but I've already used it above, I'm going to use Amazon's true category for it, which is, in Amazon's opinion, the subject matter is epoxies, right? Because that's how it's got it categorized. So from there, I go ahead and list that as a subject matter. So I think, when you get to the other attributes, you can really pull down some good category stuff and use those category keywords wherever you think they're relevant, within the intended use, within the other attributes, and within the subject matter. And I have found that works really well for ranking. So that is how I do back-end search terms, and that covers it.